Welcome to the Beyond Body podcast with your hosts, Mia and Holly. Join us for a sometimes fortnightly podcast
where we explore all things mental health, being a messy human, and how to get the most out of this one precious life.
And all the ridiculous stories in between.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Beyond Body podcast. As always, I am here with the lovely Mia Finlay. How are you this morning, Mill?
I'm really good. How are you, birthday girl?
Well, I feel like the people are probably overhearing about me turning 30. I think we've been talking about 12 months.
We got the journey in and now we want to know all about the journey on the other side.
Guys, on the other side, it is fantastic. Stoked to be in the 30s club. I feel at home. It feels super comfortable. Have the most relaxing day with family, and it just feels great. Stoked to be here.
We're so happy to have you.
Couldn't be less stressed. It just feels right.
Excellent. Yeah, I think I've seen this shift of having some pre-30 anxiety and then just kind of settling into it, and it just sort of intersects, right? Like you just kind of reach the point of, I'm in the point of my life where I'm supposed to be, and I just happen to be 30.
Exactly. I think I'm under the impression of, we all go through our topsy-turvy lives at points, and sometimes we have really hard months and weeks and years. But overall, I do feel like it just gets better. Like when you zoom out, the trajectory is up.
Yeah. The arc is always bending towards positive, I feel. And I have to remind myself of that. Looking at the state of the world, sometimes we might be in a season where it feels a bit crappy to be, whether it's a woman or marginalized or whatever it might be. And I can't speak for anybody else's experiences, but I just have to think, okay, what were the women in the 60s in that wave of feminism dealing with? And What did they have to do to continue to contribute to that arc towards better days? And we're in our own arc at the moment.
We are in the arc and we're doing a great job.
Oh, beautiful. Love it. Fabulous. So what are we talking about today, Hol?
So everyone, today we have put together a few things that we talk to our clients about all the time. We've each come up with 5 things that we probably talk about weekly, because as much as there is not one size fits all in terms of recovery and what even your coaching experience is going to be like, there's always common threads and themes. So these are some of the things that we think would be really beneficial for the people to just hear.
Absolutely. And I think that I know that we've both sort of gathered our own, but always trying to make things as accessible to people as possible. Obviously, everyone has their own individual behavioral health profile, their own challenges, their own things that they have to tackle. So hopefully these are as relatable to as many people as possible, but always remembering that it's pretty hard to give really broad blanket advice when it comes to something as complex and specific as an eating disorder. So hopefully there's some stuff in here which is helpful to most people.
For sure. And in saying that as well, we're also always so open to anyone's feedback about things that we say on the podcast, your own experiences, if it related, if it landed, if it didn't.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your first one?
So my first one is you need to choose what you want most, not what you want right now. So this is really a lesson in instant gratification versus delayed gratification. When I was sort of writing these and reflecting on it, I think generally my work and my philosophy is a lot about mindset shifts, but also not overlooking a lot of the lifestyle aspects as tools for regulation and general emotional stability. So I think my points are really reflective of that, and this one is absolutely. So if you are only to choose what you want now, not what you want most, which ultimately, if someone is going through recovery, you're going to be experiencing a lot of urges, right? And that's what you want to do right now. But if we're only choosing what we want to do right now, we're going to struggle to move forwards, because we end up staying in exactly what we know, which is repeated behaviors and that instantaneous soothing, even if the soothing doesn't last for very long. And the path of healing in recovery and otherwise actually is being able to catch yourself in the reaction and realize that what you want now, what the urge is saying, is not the only option. And it's in that moment you get to choose what you want most, which is probably, your future life, your goals, things further on than recovery, than what you want right now, which would ultimately be to alleviate some level of discomfort. I think when you're able to see and acknowledge that the short-term desire, often in the form of an eating disorder urge, without actually engaging in it, it gives you this immense power to be able to zoom out and keep the bigger picture. I think when someone, yeah, I can totally speak from my own experience here. When I first sort of got a grip on this of being able to feel the urge and not respond to it, it's really this taking back of your personal power because you realize, oh, what I do next is actually in my control. And I think, ultimately choosing delayed gratification, not instant gratification, feels fucking awful at first. But I think when you start to understand the value of this through evidence and through just being able to sit in that discomfort and realizing the discomfort is not actually going to destroy you, it gets a lot easier to keep choosing to do the harder thing. And I think, this goes for in those moments of the really intense, like eating disorder urge, but also even in the sense, like we've spoken about before, that thing that you say, Mill, where you're like, am I going to do the dishes now or am I going to leave it till tomorrow? It's like, well, being able to be attuned to what your needs are and then making the best decision for you there. Is it going to be leaning into instant gratification? Sometimes that might look like, I'm really tired with work, like I'm just gonna like call it a day and not do my emails, right? Or it might be like, hey, well, I'm gonna lean into delayed gratification here because I really want to be able to like get up tomorrow and like care for myself and maybe go for a walk. I'm gonna get those things done now. So it's like choosing the discomfort now as opposed to later.
Absolutely. I think this is, I think some of the things we're going to mention today are these just core tenets of recovery and then how to stay well long term, because these are the fundamentals of our philosophy at Beyond Body. It's not just getting people well, it's helping them to learn how to stay well. And it's like, I think this came up at the retreat as well, when I'll take weighing yourself as an example of what you're talking about here, right? Like that instant gratification that eating disorder self is looking for that monitoring. It wants that data. It wants to use it against you because, as we know, the number is just how your body interacts with gravity. The feelings and the judgments that your eating disorder attaches to that is not equally factual. It's not factual at all. It's an opinion. But there is, I think that's one of the strongest urges people have, is the weighing themselves, right? And when I say to them, do you imagine yourself weighing yourself compulsively in 10 years? And they say, absolutely not. I'm like, when does that start? When does that change? Like, when do we get off the scale? When they're like, no, Mia, I can't do that. And I couldn't do that. And I'm not going to be able to do it. But then there's this future where that's not happening. So there's a bridge we've got to cross here. When do we start crossing that bridge? And it's the way that you phrase that is just such a beautiful encapsulation of that hope and that faith that we put into this process of this thing we can, even if just vaguely envision what life could be like without an eating disorder, there's got to be some exchange for that. And that is that short-term gratification. That is that short-term avoidance and numbing and soothing of discomfort. Because as you say, I think, yeah, it's true. Initially, you will feel awful pushing back against that tension. But there are moments where you go, as you say, like, I just discovered a superpower. Like, I can
100%.
do that. I can get to the other side of that feeling. And also when you go, it's not inevitable that I'm going to do that. I remember the first time I didn't use a behavior that was so compulsive, I felt like I had no control over it. My narrative was that it was always inevitable. It was hiding behind the next corner, waiting to jump out at me. And then the first time I actively pushed against that urge, and I was like, oh my God, that was like a gargantuan feat.
What can I not
go
do?
down in the history books. That was David versus Goliath.
And I think that's exactly what that's when you really get to meet like your inner cheerleader and you're like, I'm a goddamn rock star. This is the coolest thing ever. It's so cool when we have clients come to a session and maybe we've been sort of talking about a challenge they've had or like a goal that they've just felt too scared to do. And then they come and they're like, I did the thing. Well, you did the thing, right? And like just like that level of motivation, and now they have that as a reference point to do it the next time, right? I think it's so easy to assume you can't do things, and it's not necessarily true that you can't do them. You just haven't experienced them yet. So this is a big one, and I also think it just is something that just helps you develop so much trust with yourself that things can feel really hard, and you can feel anxious, and you can feel scared, and you can do it anyway.
Yes, absolutely. It's that whole sense of, well, I think that actually leads nicely into mine, which is don't wait to be ready. You have to make yourself ready. And I would exchange ready for easy as well. Don't wait for it to be easy. You have to make it easier until it just becomes natural and second nature.
Mm.
because I will often get these emails because obviously throughout the week between sessions, we're doing dialogues with people, we're challenging their thoughts as they're coming up, we're troubleshooting their goals as they're doing them. The first time they do breakfast, we troubleshoot so that every breakfast that week doesn't fall off the wagon. And I'll get emails saying, my eating disorder is just so loud and I'm just not hearing healthy self at all. And I'm like, you're not waiting for healthy self. You have to make healthy self show up. You have to, and you've
Mm.
done the first step. You've reached out to me because I can back up your healthy self and help bring it to the table. But I think we sit around either I'll wait to start recovery on Monday, Mondaying everything. I'll wait to do that challenge on Monday. I'll wait to feel different on Monday. And it's just putting so much pressure on this future version of yourself who has no more information than you have right now, has no more readiness than
Totally.
you have right now, has no more motivation than you have right now. And so that's an enormous amount of pressure. And then a lot of disappointment and shame we get lumped with when we go, oh, now it's Monday and I am no different and I don't feel any more capable and nothing has materially changed and I don't feel like it's easier
Mm.
or I'm ready. You have to make yourself ready. You have to kind of put the
Mm.
cart before the horse here a little bit, which is I have to demonstrate to myself that I can do this thing, kind of like what we were talking about with your thing that we tell clients, which is, you have to be willing to put in the investment before you start getting the returns. And this is one of them. You have to, I hate how people sort of rely on the fake it till you make it in recovery, but it is kind of true.
Yeah.
I don't think you are faking it. You're just showing yourself your capacity before maybe you believe in your capacity. But I think
Mhm.
that's another truth, which is that in order to, you might know something inherently. Like I think our clients know a lot about their eating disorders. They very often know a lot about recovery, right? Like we're not
Mm.
these oracles who are like, I know everything and I just tell all these people this amazing information and they've never ever heard of it before. Like I'm not telling anyone anything new or amazing. I'm just giving them the framework to match
Mm.
knowing with doing. And
Mm.
then the intersection of knowing and doing is believing, right? Once you show
Totally.
yourself what you can do
Yeah.
and you show yourself you don't need to be ready, it doesn't need to be easy, you start to believe that you can do it despite the fact it isn't those things right now. And then the product of that is that it eventually becomes easier and you are more ready to do the next thing and the next thing. I think this is especially true right at the start when you don't have a lot of evidence that eating disorder can say scary things and be wrong about it, right? Like that initial lack of evidence is really daunting. But yeah, you're just not going to get anything out of it if you're not prepared to make a pretty solid investment of do it first, believe it later.
Totally. I think ultimately I love the idea of every second in life is an opportunity to start again. Every
Mm-hmm.
single second.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of beauty in that because, in recovery and life generally, we're not always going to reach the goal. We're going to be too scared sometimes and like pull back. But every single second you can again choose to do something different. And I really feel like I don't know if there's much that's worthwhile in life that's easy. Like I just don't know what that is. I mean, I don't know. I could be totally this could be someone's path and they think no, life is easy.
Mm.
That just has not been my path and not my experience at all. I feel like everything in my life that I really value, that I feel really proud of about my own experience, it's because I've worked hard to get there as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
um it's so important, right? Because again, both of these points we've spoken about, it speaks so much to the individual empowering themselves. So much to that. And I agree with you. I don't always love the like fake it till you make it, but sometimes it is good for someone to have a day where they pretend I don't have an eating disorder. Let's just go out into the world and let's just see what happens and then talk about it.
Yes, I used to do that, especially at
Mhm.
events, because social stuff was already so daunting for me. But then with recovery, it was even more daunting. And I used to go to events, whether it was a wedding or a friend's birthday or whatever, and be like, I'm going to pretend I don't have an eating disorder for the next few hours. Like, how would
Yeah.
I talk to people? How would I walk in a room? How would I eat? How would I dance? How would I, choose when I'm going to go home? Would I stay out later because I wasn't super self-conscious? And it was amazing. Eating disorder would usually come and kick my butt later or the
For
next
sure.
morning, but that's going to happen. Like, big
Yeah.
surprise, you're in
Cross
recovery.
that
Eating
bridge.
disorder is going to be unhappy. Oh my God, like
Yeah.
spoiler of the season.
Right on.
So get your few hours, get your evidence, and show yourself that maybe you're fundamentally wrong about a lot of the things your eating disorder tells you about those specific important moments. But yeah, like it's just that intersection of we can know a lot, but believing is a very different sensation in this process of, I know this in my core. I know it right in like the most anchored part of me versus,
Mm,
yeah, that I know that it could be better. I know that I could. I know that I can. I know that, well, okay, well, the action, the consistent action is the thing which
mm.
takes out the necessity to even have to have that dialogue with yourself because it becomes your instinct.
For sure. And what you're talking about as well, I think if someone's really able to hone this as a skill at the beginning of recovery, it sets a really strong foundation for
Mhm.
those times where you're not motivated and you don't want to get out of bed and you don't want to do it. Because I think maybe you said, I'm highly likely that you were the one that said this to me. I don't know who else would have. Um, but I think you said, like, eating disorders don't take a day off.
Mm.
And, like, therefore, recovery also can't take a day off.
Yeah. And that
And
doesn't mean you're like smashing yourself
totally, absolutely
100%
not.
because there's some of that really unhelpful rhetoric which we definitely don't champion, like the if you're not recovering you're dying, and it's like that's really intense.
Okay, very all or nothing, but okay, it's
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
gross. Yeah.
that makes it sound exhausting and maybe like people wouldn't want to do it. But yeah, it's true. I mean, whether that's you doing it at 100% or 10% or whatever, even if it's just you being a bit kinder to yourself that day, even if you're not
Yeah.
smashing all your goals, that's still recovery. You're still in
Oh,
it,
absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. And this kind of leads into my next one, which is healing is a slow burn. So,
Mhm.
what I mean by this is, I think the general attachment to speed and hustle sets a really gross precedent for someone in recovery because the nature of healing is that you can't rush it. And if you do, it probably won't work. I think, all the time we see people who are either trying to like run before they can walk, which looks like too much too soon, or experiencing so much suffering because they're resisting their current reality because they just want to be like, they just want to be at the finish line already. And both those scenarios are really unhelpful for someone in recovery. I think being able to surrender to the reality that this takes time and you may not be where you want to be yet is so important because if you resist the reality that you're not there yet, it's going to cause so much unnecessary suffering. I sort of see like there is the pain of recovery, and then there is the suffering that is piled on top of recovery by resisting that initial pain, right? That looks like expecting rapid results or the avoiding the discomfort of like putting yourself in that tricky situation. And
Mhm.
both of these things, as well as like heaps of other examples, can just lead to so much frustration with the process, which can really distract you from the actual work. I think it's really easy. I'm sure I have done this as well, where you just want to skip some of the steps, right? Like some of the like the slower steps, the things like sitting with the discomfort, the resting, the processing. But it's actually those things that help you feel so much more capable of continuing the process without burnout or breakdown, right? When
Yes.
you really prioritize and respect time to rest, the
Mhm.
journey forward is going to be so much smoother. I work with clients often. This is such a common conversation that comes up where someone, they may not be burnt out in recovery, but like they're really burnt out with work or they're burnt out socially. And it's something that you have to learn how to manage your energy, particularly when you're in recovery, particularly if recovery is not the only thing you're focusing on in life, because that just actually is not going to be the situation for most people. We have a lot of clients who are mums or people who are studying, and being able to balance both things at the same time or even more than two things, it
Mm.
requires this ability to know that sometimes things are going to happen slow, and that is not only okay, it is necessary.
Yes, absolutely. I'm sure you've had this experience many times with clients as well. But something you just touched on there is such a common thing that comes up where it's usually the personality types who skew more perfectionistic. And
Shout out
it's
to the high achievers in the
this shout
people.
out to the type A's out there, where you're observing this incredible irony that I still sometimes struggle to communicate to people as I'm witnessing it, where they are so focused on, as you say, wanting to get to the finish line or wanting to do it perfectly or wanting to make it go faster, but they're stuck because that's what they're focused on.
The old tortoise versus the hare.
Right. And you're like, but we're
Yeah.
stuck
Mm. Mm.
because we are looking too far ahead and we're judging the process by where we are not versus where we are and meeting ourselves where we are. And so you'll find yourself a lot of weeks having the same conversation. And that's probably the most useful way I can hold up the mirror is I will say to them, have you noticed that the last 3 or 4 sessions that we've had the same conversation? And they'll go, oh, yeah. And I'll say, so how does that then stack up against these expectations you have of yourself that you need to be further along than you are when you've kind of been forced to repeat the same conversation 4 times by this perfectionism?
Mhm.
How does that is forget whether it's right or wrong, forget judging it. Is it
Mhm.
working? Is it effective? And they're like, okay, well, and it's we can be such helpful witnesses, right? Because we're sitting there witnessing someone's process. We've got a bird's eye view. And so we can not just look at the patterns of how are your fear foods going? How's the movement decrease going? Whatever. It's also the patterns of how they talk to themselves, how they set
Yes.
expectations around
Yes.
recovery, and their brain is telling them that this is the most effective way for me to get where I need to get to. And you're saying, but you're doing this. You're in a
Yeah.
revolving door, just yelling at yourself, right? And it took me a while to see that pattern in clients, like over the first couple of years of coaching, and to be able to kind of effectively communicate to that to them in a way that helps them get unstuck.
Yes.
And I think it's one of those things we talk about the roundabout a lot. Some of those things we have to observe in ourselves over an extended period of time before we start to absorb, okay, I want to get off this roundabout. And this is one of them. And I think it's a protective mechanism of, well, this is how I've always behaved in my eating disorder in this perfectionistic way, in this overshooting the mark kind of way, in this goalposts always moving kind of way. And you just cannot bring that kind of thinking into recovery and think that you're going to reach outcomes because
Totally.
the two things are diametrically opposite. Whatever you did in your eating disorder, just do the opposite of that, and you're probably in a
Totally.
good spot to get somewhere in recovery, which means
Totally,
messy,
right?
which means imperfect, which means experimenting, which means flexible, which means, margin for error. And
Totally.
so if anything's feeling rigid or perfectionistic, you are probably stuck in a revolving door yelling judgments at yourself.
Totally. It's so interesting. I see that all the time where someone has, they were really good, air quotes, everyone really good at their eating disorder. So they only want to do recovery. They're going to be really good at it. And they don't know what being good at recovery really looks like because it's so
Mhm.
different for every individual person. And, it really speaks to this idea that it's not just about like doing the behavioral things in recovery. Like when you're in recovery, we are taking on an entire different framework, belief system, approach, way of resting. Like you're ultimately like creating this new foundation of life. And that means that we're not taking the approach of the eating disorder and then reapplying it in recovery because it's the problem, not the solution. Also, just on this point as well, something else that I want to mention is I just think it's so important for everyone to remember that life is happening now, not when you're healed, right? And even when you recover, there's always going to be the next thing that you want or the next place you want to be or goal you want to hit, right?
Yeah.
So I think this perspective shift helps people also be really present for all of it, not just lost in like the daydream of, the future of what it's going to be like when I don't have an eating disorder. Because it's just really easy to miss life as well when you're on that like real, like narrow focused healing trajectory.
Yes. And I mean, we've talked a lot about the fact that post recovery, we've gone through challenges and really life, altering, shattering challenges. And also you're still working out who you are, and it's not a fixed point at the end of the process of how you're going to feel or who you're going to be. Like at the moment, I'm going through the process of being assessed for ADHD, like autism and ADHD. Initial assessments are showing we're on the right path. Little throwback to that fabulous episode with Kaz
Mhm.
about that process. And, it's been a really eye opening and also incredibly emotional process of, at 37 being like, oh, here's this new understanding of myself. And here's this new sort of recontextualizing and finding a different kind of compassion for myself, where I've had a lot of judgment and shame with some of the ways that this stuff shows up in my life. And that was the same thing when I had to go through trauma work after, going through a lot of trauma and a lot of loss over a couple of years. If I'd stuck with my recovery belief of when I'm done and nothing will ever happen to me that's going to be core or foundation shattering or difficult or dysregulating or whatever, I would just be setting myself up for failure. I don't think it's, as you're saying, it's
Yeah.
not just the perfectionism of the stuff you're doing in real time. It's the perfectionism of when I get there, it's going to be like this. And it's like that curiosity just has to apply to the whole process. And that includes like who you're going to be
Yeah.
as you get past this process as well, because you're just putting a ceiling over yourself that you're just inevitably very painfully going to hit. And that means that you're not really using the fundamentals of recovery, right? Which is about self-compassion, which is about flexibility, which is about being open and curious and meeting yourself where you are at all these different intervals of life. And yeah, I think that, this is where we've let people down a lot, is just they look at the metrics, they look at the box
Mhm.
tickers and they think I'm done. Or we go the other way and we oversell, not oversell, but misrepresent what it's going to look like afterwards, which was why it was always very important to me that I continued to share. Yeah, here's the great stuff that recovery gave me, and here's the great things that happened with my life afterwards. But also, my life has been utter, total, steaming garbage at times.
Mm.
But it's through the learnings of recovery that I was able to navigate my way through it. Recovery didn't become the expectation of, well, if that happens, then I failed, or it didn't work, or,
Mm.
this should never have happened.
Totally. Thanks for sharing that, Mill. That's really cool. I'm like yet to meet someone who hasn't gone through the process of diagnoses and it hasn't positively informed their life. Just like the more understanding about yourself and then being able to adjust your life in support of that. That's
Yeah.
awesome. I'm so stoked that you're doing that.
It's been amazing. Like it so much just makes sense. And like even conversations that I'm having with friends and family and mum,
Yeah.
and looking back on old school reports, because you have to get some of that stuff organized to do like the different stages of assessment, etc. But yeah, just so many things which make sense. And even just an initial shift of, I've just, like I did with recovery, just curiosity, just like, oh, how interesting. Like with this new information, I'm going to observe myself differently. I remember experiencing that at the start of recovery when I got this new information about myself. And I was like, oh, like this makes so much sense why I feel the way I do and why I behave the way I do and why I cope the way I do. And even that helped me to stop using behaviors or reduce using behaviors in some way, because I would, instead of reacting, I'd go, oh, of course I'm reacting like this. That
Yeah.
it helped me to separate from eating disorder a little
Totally.
bit.
Totally. Amazing.
Yeah. Next one, lean into the body image and physical change fears,
Mm-hmm.
which
Mm-hmm.
was a real discovery for me as a coach, where I think we've talked about this before, that sometimes your instinct and inclination can be to soothe those fears or go, "Oh, like, no, that's not something to fear," or blah, blah. Like, we have to acknowledge why people have these fears. And part of it is owing to the illness, part of it is owing to our culture. It's, the macro and micro elements of fat phobia and diet culture, etc. And then it's the mechanisms of the eating disorder, which, intersect with that. I don't know why intersect is my favorite word at the moment, but it is.
Go
And
for it. It
we're
is.
gonna
It's fine. Just roll with
imagine if
it.
I go through
Don't question it.
and just like bleep over and replace it with a different word, like dub myself.
Different voice.
Yeah, yeah, like a robot voice. The inclination was sometimes to soothe that, or, even to parrot what was told to me, which was like, oh, we'll deal with that. We'll deal with that if it happens. I mean, I never said that, but I remember being like, well, that's what I was always told. What are we meant to tell people? And luckily, I'd gone down the body neutrality path in my own recovery, and then dug deeper into that. It was the very first workshop and course I ever put together because I was so passionate about it, because there was just nothing for people. And so when I started working with clients and they would have these fears, and it would come up in dialogues like, what if my body changes in
Oh,
this,
all the time.
right? All the time. Like if it's
Yeah.
not a part of 90% of dialogues, then you haven't gone far enough into a dialogue, possibly. And so I started asking them, okay, and then what would happen? Because very often
Mm.
we just stop there. Like, my body's going to change and I'm going to be so uncomfortable. It's not, we know it's not just about the body. We know that those changes represent something deeper. And when we get to the heart of it, it's about, if my body changes, I will be so uncomfortable. I will be rejected. criticized, I won't belong, or I won't feel I belong, whatever it is. And again, that is, we're holding two thoughts in our head at the same time, that we have these fears that are your eating disorder is exacerbating and weaponizing against you, but we also want to be sensitive to the fact that, there are elements of our culture where this is very real. But when I get them to play the tape forward and do that, and then, so then what's going to happen? Then what's going to happen? Well, I'll feel so uncomfortable and I won't want to go out socially and I'll isolate. And then, I won't be able to live my life the way I want to and I won't be able to cope. Okay. And then what will happen? And then, well, Mia, I'll probably start using eating disorder behaviors again. And I'm like, okay, so you've already done that. Like, we just asked your eating disorder, like what the worst case scenario is if your body changes in this process, and it answered with itself. You've done that already. Like if you asked me, or if I asked you your worst case scenario in life, you would probably come up with stuff you've never experienced before that you can't even fathom going through, right? Your eating disorder, when we ask it, what is the worst thing that's going to happen to you if XYZ happens, whether it's body change, fears, or whatever, it will always ultimately answer with itself. I will end up back where I started. But that's not the only possible answer, right? I was talking about this on a podcast I was on yesterday, where it's like, to believe that there is no alternative other than that is to deny the existence of all the people out there who have recovered into all different kinds of bodies at all different ages, with all different abilities, with all different gender identities, body sizes. It is to say that they don't exist and that's not real, right? So it's not the only possible outcome that your beliefs that you have about bodies now and your body now is going to still be in the brain of the person who is further down the track and is able to have a different view of not only your body, but bodies in general, right? We so often put our currently eating disorder brain into this future version of us. And it's like, well, this is the fundamental thing we're changing, right? It's not body first and then, brain is the secondary thing. The brain is the primary thing we're changing. And it's why I get people to do things like go out and people watch, go out and actually look at real people, whether it's at the supermarket or it's at the beach or it's at the local cafe or whatever, and look at the diverse bodies which show up in friendship groups, in families, sitting and having a cup of tea and reading, by themselves quietly, having a lovely Sunday afternoon with themselves. Having a squabble with their partner or whatever, like all the different ways that bodies show up in actual reality, and asking yourself why you can't have that kind of existence in a body that maybe eating disorder doesn't currently approve of. And obviously a lot of that comes with the somatic work we do and the body image work that we do with people to, stop the body monitoring and to, get to a different kind of relationship with their body and a different body image experience than the distressed body image experience. But I think that if we don't let people explore this, it becomes this unchecked boogeyman under the bed.
Yes.
Just becomes, and I'm saying this because I'm using this term metaphorically, it becomes outsized, right? Like the boogeyman under the bed could just be a sock, and suddenly it's this terrifying thing which is going to eat your face off, right? And I just think that we've got to let people explore it. We've got to let them, without judgment, without shame, say the thing they're scared to say. Not only because they're saying it out loud, but because they think that they might be judged or shamed for sharing these beliefs.
Absolutely. And I think also on that, it's almost like a form of like you're gaslighting yourself. Like say someone is really scared and say this person is at the beginning of a weight restoration process and they're really scared of gaining the weight, and because they feel like all these XYZ things are going to happen. And the way in which they're, like you're saying, the way in which they're supporting themselves is saying, oh, no, that won't happen. It's like, well, the weight gain probably will happen. The other things don't necessarily need to happen. I feel like it's such a disservice to the individual if the only way they're coping with the eating disorder is using the eating disorder by saying, no, like when you're not going to let it happen. And like, that's just wouldn't happen to us. Because ultimately it doesn't let that person go into the arena where they can start to understand that this is going to be a tricky process and you've got some things working against you, but that doesn't mean that you can't handle it. I think that ability to be able to soothe with the healthy self there, with the language change of being like, yeah, we are going to be uncomfortable, but we're learning how to handle it. Let's just focus with one moment of discomfort at a time. Like, let's just be with the somatic feeling. Like, let's let go of the narrative right now because those things have not happened, right? Even just that practice is so, so powerful for an individual going through body image struggles.
Yes, and it's the concept of, you know, when you think about somebody who's trying in the behavioral profile where someone's trying to control their body size so that they feel more confident and they feel more
Mm.
acceptable and they can be feel like they can be more connected. When we play an eating disorder forward, that's not what happens. You are probably isolated. You're probably, even if you are spending time with people, you're not connected. There's no way your brain is nourished and you are present and you are there and you are fully authentically yourself. And people are picking up on that energy, right? And there's no way that your brain is powered enough that you're
Mm.
pursuing the things that are really important to you, that you know feel like you want to go after, where maybe your body has felt like the permission slip to be able to do the things you're really passionate about.
Yeah.
So then tell me what the value of the body is and why this alternative potential presentation of your body, which, if like, what if you get all those things that you're looking for in your eating disorder, if you find a place where you can be more peaceful and accepting of where your body genetically needs to be, right? Or in whatever season of life it needs to be. So again, it's not about discounting that there are some very real reasons why people fear those outcomes, but it's pointing the finger back at eating disorder and going, okay, but you promised that if my body was this, then I would get XYZ. Are we there? Like, are we truly authentically there? Okay, then what is the value of that body, of that smaller body?
Mhm.
And obviously, putting a big caveat with this discussion in terms of, you know, our experience is not of somebody in a larger body. I have, in periods of my life, been in a larger body, but I understand that I don't experience that now. But again, this is why when clients say to me, "But Mia, how can you talk about that experience with confidence?" Because I'm not the only person on the planet who has recovered.
Mhm.
And again, it is to discount the fact that there are successful, loved, confident, you know, happy, whatever descriptor is important to you, people who present in all different kinds of bodies, some of which who have gone through the recovery process.
Mm.
So that probably means we need to diversify the bodies we're looking at, the people we're interacting with, the voices we're seeking out, and not continuing to feed the eating disorder bias of you can only have this if the body is XYZ.
I would say that a lot of the time, people who might be in or have worked really hard to be in a like very conventionally accepted body and a smaller body type are interacting with the world maybe in a different way because they feel like they have something to lose if they're in a weight suppressed body that's not their natural body. I think that person is always going to live a little bit scared.
Totally. Like you're on a knife's edge of,
Totally.
I can't lose this.
Yeah.
And I think that's another falsehood of eating disorder where it's like,
Mm,
you know, there's this like point you're going to get to where it's going to leave you alone. And it's like, but by the
100%.
time, even if it does get to the point where it's somewhat satisfied, the threat then becomes, well, now you can't lose this.
Absolutely. When I
Right.
have been at times in my life where I've been in a weight suppressed body, that has been the most anxious I have ever been because every day I would wake up so anxious thinking these are the things that I have to do to remain in this body which is not mine and I'm not going to be okay if I don't. Like that is such a hard existence for anyone.
Like driving around a stolen car.
It is driving around in a stolen car. You are on high alert any second.
This
At
is not
any
mine.
second, those sirens could go on.
How
At
do I keep
any
this thing and go undetected? Because it's not mine. I'm not meant to have it.
Oh god, god. Maybe we'll do one more,
Yeah.
and then what we'll do is that we'll keep our other 5, and we'll do a part B to this,
We love a
right?
two-parter.
We love a two-part. So my next one is recovery is about doing the behavioral and the practical things, but it's also about learning what keeps your heart alive. So
Mhm.
this is all about keeping that perspective of the bigger picture and actually just learning about yourself along the way. I had this moment a few Sundays ago where I was at the beach on my own and I took my board out and I'd had a little like surfing hiatus just because I like psyched myself out, which I just do sometimes because there'd been shark attacks and whatever. Anyway, back out in the water. It was pristine surf conditions for me. It was just baby wave after baby wave. And I was in the lineup with this one other woman who was so rad and we were chatting the whole time. She was like in her 60s. And I was the epitome of joy, like endorphin, serotonin, like the sun was out. I have never had more fun in my life. And I had the thought, if anyone's ever depressed, you should move to the beach and learn to surf because this is so healing to me. And it really made me think, imagine if I was just so focused on like trying to be in a suppressed body that I didn't allow myself to live life and to learn to experience life and find the things that just keep my heart alive. I think this is, recovery forever reminds me like this is why I want to live a connected and fulfilling life. And obviously everyone has the hours of the day where we have to work and do the things and do the washing, tick the boxes, etc. We can't always be having fun, but I do think the fun is the color, particularly when you are going through a hard time or a really big experience like recovery.
Yeah.
And I guess it doesn't even have to be the fun either. It could be just moments of connection, right? That remind you, this is the stuff you will remember in 50 years' time from now. And that could like literally just be like doing an art project or calling a friend you haven't spoken to in a couple of years or, being awake at sunrise. I prescribe lifestyle actions as much as I prescribe behavioral goals for clients.
Yes. Yeah. I had an experience like that recently with whale season down here.
So cool. Love it.
And at Mum's place, it's you know where it is because like we've done retreats there, and there's that big rock shelf which is directly in front of those two houses we rented for the last Australia retreat. And that's where the mums and their babies come, and sometimes they'll hang out for a couple of days, obviously because the babies aren't as strong as the older whales. And so it was a mum with babies breaching and like splashing their tails around. And it was like for a couple of days, we just were seeing them nonstop. And I ran across the road and went down because ever since I was a kid, we used to raise hell down on those rocks. I don't know why we were let to like be down there unsupervised. Like there's massive cliffs on either edge of it. And there's like huge waves that have a huge rock shelf underneath them. So Louise, just outing you there for some questionable 90s parenting.
She was at bridge.
She was on holiday. She was like, just get out of the house. But I just sat down there and just watched them. And it was the most glorious day. It was like one of our first 28-degree days. And just sat and watched them. And there was like one fisherman on the rocks. And we were both like not speaking to each other. We're too far away, but we're both just in awe, just watching this display. And it was, like total presence, right? Just total and complete presence, which, like those moments with an eating disorder, never had one. Never had one. Incapable.
I think that's it. Incapable. I reflect often now. I love hearing about baby whales. I feel like this is something that recovery gave me as well. I am so sensitive to the world and I'm so happy to be. Spring though, I don't know if anyone else experiences this, but I get so sensitive in spring because there's so many baby calves and these little ducklings.
Yeah.
I was at my mum's house a couple of nights ago in Canberra and I went for like a Love Daylight Savings post-dinner walk.
Yes.
In a stroll up Anzac Parade. And it was a Sunday, so there weren't many cars around. And I look onto the road and these little two ducks and their ducklings, like all of them have just walked onto Anzac Parade, which is a 3-lane road. So I've like sprinted over, first time I've sprinted in about 10 years to like try to lure these like ducks off. But if you like get too close to the ducks, the mum's like, oi.
Freak out.
You need to keep your distance. And I'm like, I'm helping you. You need to get off the road. And then the lights change. There's 3 lanes of traffic that are coming towards me. So I've like literally held down 3 lanes of traffic. And it's like people are honking at me. Like everyone's like, what's the commotion? I'm giving crazy person on the street. But then just ducks. I'm like, that's literally what I'm doing. Like there's duck.
Like the chicken dance.
Conveniently, there was just a police on a motorbike that was like, he like saw there was some commotion, lights on, he's like zoomed down to be like, what's the commotion? And then me and this police officer like we got the ducks off. And then I came home and I just like burst out in tears to my sister and she's like, oh my God, what's wrong? I was like, I don't know if the ducks made it to where they were going. I'm just so it's just so sensitive to like babies in the world and like beautiful things happening. That's such a rogue
Exactly.
story. But the point of this is that I think when you're so lost in your own suffering and I need to lose weight and I need to focus on this, you forget that like, and I say this in the retreats a lot, like the world's just not about us. It's
Yes.
about like being able to experience moments and community and like be there for other people.
Mhm.
And I think that's one of the worst things that having an eating disorder takes away. Like you kind of just you're just so lost in your own bubble, and I'm so grateful to be such an outwardly like expressive sensitive person and like have the capacity and desire to want to like be involved in community and like have chats with random people, which is they're just some of the like subtle things that you don't realize that you're losing when you're in it.
Yeah, it's like I get, as you know, like with the stuff I do online, like I get a lot of shit from people being like, care less. And I'm like, I love how much I care. Like I
Totally.
love how much, I was doing a live on TikTok the other day and someone was like, because it's lovely now to reach an age where, especially when there's women a lot younger than you following you, there's
Cool.
something really beautiful about that. Like when women in their 20s are in my community, I'm like, oh, this is like a really important time to be looking for like how to be in the world,
Mm.
right? And they'll ask me stuff like, I got a question, have you ever felt ashamed of like being really politically aware and vocal and opinionated? And I was like, I've never judged or shamed myself. I've definitely felt it from other people, but it's something which contributes to my self-esteem. It doesn't take away from it, and it's a really good guide. How much I care, I don't expect everyone else to care as much as I care. But if someone doesn't think that caring is good, like what a great barometer of probably not my person, you know?
Oh my gosh,
So
absolutely.
whatever it is you care
Right.
about, whether it's like the fragility of the world or like the
Totally.
beauty of the world, or it's
Yeah,
about causes that are important to you, like that should
totally.
be a cornerstone of your sense of self and self-esteem, and a really good barrier in terms of like who do
Mm.
I allow to have access to those things that are really precious to me.
And such a marker as well as just of personal values and like are you connected with them? Are you living by them?
Yeah, absolutely. Real deal kind of stuff.
Totally.
So I guess I'll finish out of the ones I've got left.
Mhm.
Part of full recovery is defined by taking ownership of your process.
Mm.
I so fully believe this and firmly believe it, that you are not going to feel like this at the start or all the way through, but at some point, knowing that this is completely your process, it is your recovery, it's your life, it's your responsibility, is fundamental to being able to not only get to the point you want to get to, but then stay true to
Absolutely.
that final hurdle, right? And I've witnessed this so many times, and especially the times I find it most remarkable is when somebody has every reason not to do this. I have worked with clients. One of my favorite demographics to work with is women who have had eating disorders for a long time, because I have such a fundamental understanding from my advocacy work of like how treatment has probably let them down, a lot of the beliefs they're probably coming into our work with, a lot of the self-doubt, but most importantly doubt in the process and in the
Yeah.
support they probably have. And watching that switch where we are totally here to validate all of that and affirm that, and how wrong and unfair that has been for them. And to obviously then go through the process of building the trust with you as the provider. But then the next important step is, and now it's up to you, with support, with safety nets, with cheerleaders, but it is up to you. And I think people can either hear that one of two ways or hold a bit of both, which is, oh my God, it's completely up to me. How daunting. The other flip side of that is it's completely up to you. You don't have to wait for anybody. You don't have to wait for permission. You don't have to wait for the green light or for someone to come and save you. By the way, in life, nobody's coming to save you ever from anything.
Mhm.
They can
Mhm.
temporarily, and then you have to get on board with whatever the
Mm.
situation is. But that to me is always one of the most incredible shifts that I ever see, and is by far the most solidifying of
Yeah.
somebody's recovery, is
Yeah.
truly stepping into that. Yeah, this is up to me and I can do this and I can do it with support, etc. But no one's going to pick up the fork. Nobody's going to write the email. Nobody's going to do the healthy distraction thing. Nobody's going to regulate me. That's me. That's me.
Great point. I so agree with this. I work with a lot of the younger gals, so might work with someone while they're a teenager, you know, going through recovery, but also coming into adulthood. So it's a huge thing in this demo as well, because they are literally like stepping out into the world and with their wings on, and they don't have experience that they can fly yet. Without, you know, maybe it's like that primary caregiver is still super involved. They've got you know, full treatment team, etc. And so for a lot of time they haven't had to, and it hasn't yet been necessary for them to take those steps.
Yeah.
But I think like ultimately there's also so much fear, I think, for like young people. I honestly, as a 30-year-old in 4 days, I still will have this experience sometimes. Like I live on my own in like a very rural place. Like I had to figure out how to like do the whole like gas bottle thing, and like what do I even ask for at the petrol station when I need new gas bottles? They're like, how what size? I was like, I don't know, a
I
gas
know
bottle.
my gas
I don't
ran
know.
out and I was like,
I don't know.
now what?
I couldn't make a cup of
My house
tea.
is freezing.
But you figure it out, right? And I think it's such a beautiful thing. Obviously, someone has to, they need the supports in recovery to be able to get to that point. But ultimately, like you're saying, it's like, well, you have to do this on your own. No one's coming to save you. And I love that mindset shift of like, yeah, no one's coming to save you. You got to do this, girlfriend. Go out there, see what happens. If you fall down, that's okay. Fall forward, get back up, keep going.
Yes. And then everything else just, it doesn't mean that you have to live in this isolated, independent way where you never need anyone or rely on anybody. It just feels like you have layers, right? Like you have layers of insulation, and your first one is yourself. And then you become more skilled at having the things around you that back that up and solidify that a bit more. But those things are not, we talk about it like in terms of the baskets of eggs, right? Like if all your eggs are in the basket of somebody else, that's really tenuous. If they're all in like one skill set or whatever, or they're all just in you. No, of course that's not sustainable, but we want a really generous portion that's with you, because at the end of the day, like you've always got you. And part of this process is becoming a version of yourself that you probably needed when your eating disorder showed up. That's who is ultimately putting your eating disorder self out of a job, is that healthy self that you probably, I needed this version of me when I was 19, right? And that's who put eating disorder self out of a job. That's why I don't have an eating disorder anymore.
Absolutely. I love when I text clients over WhatsApp and say I'm like in a session, I haven't responded to a client. They've messaged me like, hey, this happened. I'm like really stressed about this. And then in the time where I haven't responded, they've been like, I actually regulated and I sorted it out and I'm feeling fine. I'm like, go girl. This is the real work. That's
I did the things you would have said anyway.
Yeah. I just reread our emails and I'm fine.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, this was beautiful. I really loved this. And I think that being able to disseminate a little bit of this, you know, client specific advice that comes up all the time will hopefully help people along who, you know, can add this to their basket. But yeah, we'll do a two-parter to this. We'll hold on to the others and be back with another episode in a couple of weeks. But Miss 30-year-old, so lovely to see you again. Thank you for being with me as always. And as Hal said, if you have anything for us, episode suggestions, feedback, etc., we love to hear from you.
Thanks, Mill. I love doing this with you, and we'll see the people soon.
See you in a couple of weeks.